Welcome back to another episode of Accept, Then Achieve. I'm so honored to have our guest here today. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Donna Davis. I'm an intentional strategist for life and business.
Love that. Oh my gosh, can you tell us more about your journey? What drew you to being where you are today?
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually got married when I was a high school senior. I was still in high school, and I thought that my life was about to be the best thing ever. And it turned out to be anything but that. I ended up in an abusive marriage, physically, emotionally, financially, just in every avenue of my life. And I was able to overcome and get out of that relationship. And once I did, I thought I was free, right? I wasn't with him anymore. I was in a different city. And I was like, this is great until I discovered it wasn't, because the emotional toil and the emotional baggage actually packed up and came with me. And those emotions said, oh, we're moving. Okay. So I still had the emotions of, not being worthy, not being enough, and all of those limiting things. And it began to seep into other relationships that I had. When I tried to get jobs, I was like, okay, there's no need to apply for that. They won't want you. You're not good enough. Look at how you dress, look at how you talk, and just all of these things. And I began to have some success in getting jobs and doing things, but still feeling less than and not worthy and rejected and depressed. So I was walking one day and it was like people everywhere. I don't know if I was at the mall or what or wherever it was. And I was smiling and doing all these things and looking quote unquote normal, whatever normal looks like, right? Like I didn't have a care in the world, like I was fine. And I knew on the inside that I was breaking apart, that I just couldn't take it anymore. And I began to look around me and I said to myself, if I feel this way, then I know I'm walking in the midst of so many other women who are feeling the exact same way. And it was at that point that I knew that I wanted to break the hold that emotional strongholds have on women who have the ability to achieve, who are smart. I mean, I was smart. I was salutatorian in my class. I could get jobs. I could learn quickly, but I never equate any of that with that I was valuable.
Hmm.
And I knew other women did the same thing. And then I tried to be a people pleaser, right? So with all of these skills that I had, I was like, oh, I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you. And it just made people use me more because I began to equate my value to the things that I was able to do. So when people use those things up and then it was never enough for them, then I had no value. So through counseling and talking to friends, I began to really understand that my value had nothing to do with my ability. That my value was innate to who it is that I was because I existed, because God created me. I was valuable. And I sought out to help other women accept themselves for who it is that they were and understand that their gifts and talents are just an offshoot and are not defining element of who they are. So I began Donna Davis Presents. I do coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching for organizations and different groups on Facebook. And I do presentations that are tailored specifically for groups and organizations that help women get beyond their barriers, get beyond what is holding them back, get beyond the people pleasing, the fears, the doubts, and all of those stuff and walk into the fullness of who it is that God created them to be, just as they are, because they are enough.
Oh, I love that. I really absolutely 100% resonate with that message. And that's the whole message of this podcast, too, is that yes, we are so valuable just as who we are. It's not what we do, it's not any of these other things about us. Oh, I, it's so great to just meet you and connect and to share our
Thank
journeys
you.
and your wisdom too on that. So, I mean, you mentioned counseling, like what really helped you the most in just reaching that feeling finally of enoughness and accepting yourself and your worthiness?
Yes, it actually got to the point where I just was exhausted. I
Mhm,
was just emotionally spent of pouring out
mhm,
and nothing coming in. So I actually got to the point where I was empty.
mhm,
And I had someone to tell me, they just started naming all of these accomplishments and stuff that I had done. And they were like, you didn't do these things because you weren't able or capable. You did them because it's innate in you. You didn't see your value because it was just who you were, but other people saw it and used it to their gain. um so I began to do some reflection and journaling and working on how did I get to where I was. I was bullied in school, and sometimes it takes going back. Grew up in poverty, so being picked on, having less than, clothes were not necessarily always clean when I went to school, and defining myself in those things and coming to the point of realizing that I was not any of those things, that I was a unique human being with passions and desires and abilities that made me who I was, that made me a contributing factor in this world, that made me worthy, that whenever I open my mouth, whatever I say had value, wherever I went had to have a purpose because I didn't belong to myself, that God created me. And rejecting myself was just huge. And when I gave my life to Christ and understood that I did not have a right to reject who I was because I was created, I existed. I was worthy because I existed, and I did not have a right to say that I wasn't worthy. I didn't have a right to say that because I grew up disadvantaged that I should treat myself as disadvantaged, right?
mhm.
Because I grew up with less than, that I should see myself as what others who had more than saw me, that because I chose to get married at 18 and was abused, that I should have just stayed and be stuck.
Oh, I love that perspective. Yes, that it's who are we to diminish
Right.
ourselves?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even getting out of that relationship, it came to a point where the fear of staying
Mhm,
became more fearful to me than the fear of leaving. I had no idea what I would do. I had no idea where I would go. I did not value myself, but I felt God was telling me I created you for more. I didn't even know what more meant. Like, right, more of this or more of
mhm,
something else. But I knew it was something that I had to pursue, or that life of regret that I thought I had wouldn't mean a thing. I mean, it would not be able to measure up to what would really happen in my life if I didn't. So I actually left in the midst of, how some people say, oh, you got tired and blah, 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 and you got your family members to beat them up and all of this stuff, and they snatch you out. No, 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 none of that happened. It was actually still scared, still trembling. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. But I am leaving here because I am worth more than
mhm.
this. And for someone who felt rejected, felt worthless, to get to that point, that I began dealing with what I called them facts instead of feelings. I
Mm,
began acting on what I knew, which was that God did not create me to be a punching bag. That much I knew. I felt like I was trapped and maybe I should stay, because where would I go? I began to act on fact rather than feelings.
absolutely. Yes. I I love that too. Like, I'm meant for more, or this is not right for me. Like, I don't know, the unknown's scary, but this
Right.
known is definitely a no-go. Me too. It was similar, like hitting some sort of rock bottom that really, it's like, oh, that's what we really needed to make
Yeah.
a change.
Yeah.
Of all of the ways, or I guess you mentioned like the emotional baggage, how, like, what helps you to like unpack it really and actually shed it and let it go? I know you mentioned bringing from the subconscious to the conscious. How do you do that? But then how do you actually, like, you're aware of it, yes, but then like how do you
Yes.
actually, set it down
Absolutely.
and get rid of it?
Absolutely. Because we can spend a lot of our life, just being suppressed by emotions and what
Mm,
other people put on us, right? Like being depressed, feeling guilt and
mm.
anger and shame. Shame, oh, huge, right?
Yeah.
But shame is, of course, one of those emotions that will go into our subconscious because it's something we won't talk about, but it's also something that guides us. And in moving emotions and negativity and barriers from our subconscious into our conscious really requires that we take some time and meditate on whatever issue we have going on at the time, right? Because sometimes I don't know what's going on with me. That may be a good time to stop and breathe and reflect, to determine where that emotion is coming from. It's not that your child didn't wash the dishes. It's
Mhm.
not that your boss got on your nerve one more time. It's actually something deeper. And to be vulnerable enough to go to that place in order to deal with the root cause is one of the things that I help my clients deal with, because if you're not dealing with the root cause, you're putting a band-aid on a sore that will never heal. And you don't want to do that. So I have coaches myself that we go into subconscious work, because it is a process to do. And you want somebody that's certified in doing it to help you with that process. So I have coaches myself that help me to deal with some of the subconscious issues that I had. For example, I had feelings for the longest that nobody loved me.
Mhm.
Um, and when I did the work to discover where that came from, it was like, oh my goodness, I understood where it came from and was not only able to heal it in that moment back in my youth, but to heal it from every instance that it occurred coming forth in my life. And now I know that I'm loved, that someone saying no to me or being negative or quote unquote rejecting me, I don't accept that as a rejection of myself because I know I'm accepted.
Oh,
Um,
mhm. I love
And a lot of that is the work that I've done on myself, with root cause coaching and certification. So I'm certified in root cause. So I've helped other clients get through it. I have a coach myself that helps me with different areas. Another area that I had help with was my view of money, because I grew up in poverty. So I, I've spent a lot of time hoarding, right? It's like, oh my gosh, because it's this thing of, what if this doesn't happen again? What if this was just a fluke? And
Yes.
it 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 brings up lack. So for other people, they're like, "Woo, this is great. I got a promotion. I got this. I got that." And for someone who grew up who have a belief of lack, it's like, "Oh no, what will happen when this ends? What can
Mhm.
I do?" So it's kind of like you're stuck in situations where other people they actually may be stuck too but don't know that they are. But so the root cause training coaching actually helped me in that area also, and it's just been amazing. It's been amazing.
Wow. Yes. Uh, yeah. What was it? So was your journey like, was there just a moment where you felt like, okay, here's the actual turning point for me? Or was it kind of so gradual or subtle that you were like, wait, what happened? How'd I get so far in loving myself? Like, yeah, what happened?
Oh my god, it was intentional.
Hmm.
I don't be, and some people may believe that things happen. Oh, it just happened out of the blue. And there are some things that happen out of the blue, but that's why some of our lives are so haphazard now. Because we're just waiting for it to drop out the air. We're just waiting on somebody to say the right thing. I began being intentional in my life. I began paying attention to my body, to my surroundings. If something was said and it made me feel some kind of way, I didn't brush it aside. I began to lean into those things and to determine why am I having an issue with this?
Hmm.
Why does this bother me? So I began doing internal work, and it's one action at a time. So it is gradual because as we uncover some things, it can lead to other things. And then our body begins to realize, oh, it's safe to come out. Our emotions that have been hidden, that some of we don't even know about, begin to be like, oh, it's safe to be heard. Oh, she sees me. And I've had orphaned body parts, and I don't know if you know anything about that, but when you go through so many different traumatic experiences, our
Hmm.
body, our mind, our spirit try to find a way to survive because we look for safety,
Yeah.
and safety is in our parents, and safety is in people that are supposed to love us. But what happens when those relationships are not what they're supposed to be,
Right.
right? We still create in our mind some type of scenario that it is still safe. So then, whatever's going on, even if it's dysfunction, we see that as safety because we're not going to disconnect ourselves from people that we believe that we are to be connected to. Um, so we began doing things like not being here while being here, right? I'm
Mhm. Yeah.
physically here, but emotionally, spiritually, I'm not.
Right.
So I do a lot of work around being intentional. I'm the intentional shift strategist because I want to be present. And you really can't help people deal with what is holding them back or what is keeping them from being their true self if they are not present. And just
Mhm.
because you're physically in front of me does not mean you're present.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. Almost a sort of dissociation or disconnection
Yes.
from your body, or yeah, denying your emotions because
Yeah.
it wasn't
And it
safe.
helps, right? I mean, it's a mechanism to keep us safe
Yeah.
because we can't handle. I mean, we really can't handle all of it at one time if it's live, right? Because it's
Right.
too much for anybody. So it's what our body does and our mind does to keep us safe. So I make it my responsibility to help people bring themselves into the room where it's safe, where they can deal with those emotional barriers, not deal with, but evict. So I have
Mhm.
this saying. I haven't shared this with you, but I have this saying, and actually it's on my shirt.
Yeah,
Can't
what does
really
it
see my
say?
full shirt, but evicting negative emotions because they don't pay rent. I have that
Mhm.
saying trademark.
Love that.
Um, it's the crux of what it is that I do. I help women to evict negative emotions, and those emotions include different barriers, right? Because they don't pay rent. And this all stemmed from me leaving that, abusive relationship. And everyone doesn't deal with abuse, but everyone has some type of emotional baggage. And for me,
Mhm.
leaving that situation thinking that I was free, but the emotional baggage packing up and coming along with me. Like, what?
Mhm.
Like, oh, we're in a new town. We're going to behave the same way. I don't know why she here, but here we are. No,
Yeah.
evicting negative emotions because they don't pay rent.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, negative thoughts too. You don't want those clouding your brain
Yes.
either. It's
Yes.
yeah, that's really sorry, that just brought up a question though. I guess it's like how do you really be with or honor those emotions though and like what they're trying to tell you, but then once you do so it's like how can you accept them but also evict the ones that are just on loop that are like really useless.
Right. So that goes into my state of the art formula that I use to help. And it's called the ACE formula. So I help you to acknowledge, and there's a correct way to acknowledge, confront, and evict. So you can't
Love that.
evict anything that you don't confront, and you can't confront anything that you don't acknowledge. So it's a
Oh,
process.
yeah, very cool. Yes. And you mentioned earlier too, because you didn't mention about your family, but they weren't a safe space for me, and I assume they weren't for you as well. How did you create that inner safety for yourself?
So my yes, my marriage was not definitely not a safe space, but I gave my life to God while I was in that abusive marriage, and God became my safe space. Um Reading the word, understanding what um God believes about me, that I was, I'm beautifully made, and that all things work together for my good. And I was like, there's just nothing good about this situation that I'm in right here. And just understanding that Jesus died so that I could have a relationship with God, that someone would love me that much, that was love, that other than my parents, and I don't even know if my parents would love to that point. They probably would, but that they would die for me. And I was thinking, but I'm poor, I'm disadvantaged, and like, wow, no, yeah, Christ died for me. And that's when I came to that point of realizing I did not have a right to reject myself.
I see. So creating the inner sa sorry, I think because not all listeners are spiritual here. I don't know if you could speak to how they can like trust in something else that's safe if they
Oh,
feel like
yes, yes,
their other relationships
yes.
are not safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. What you want to think about is something or someone that you find safety in. So just think about, and usually it's a person, and a lot of times we find safety in our parents. Normally, it would
Normally.
be our parents, right?
Mhm. But
So
not here.
normally, right? But everything's not normal. So it could be a trusted friend, it could be an advisor, it could be the Bible, it could be whoever you believe in spiritually and have a connection with. Um, so you want to use that as an anchor,
Mhm.
right? So it's an anchor to your safety. And whenever you begin to feel unsafe, whenever you begin to feel the walls closing in, think about your anchor, right? To help bring you back into the room where you are. So, and then just slowly go back as much as you can into that situation because you want to overcome the situation. You don't
Mhm.
want a security blanket.
Yes.
You don't want to always be clinging. Um, but you want to know that if you had to, you had someone to cling on to until you got free. Someone that can guide you into getting free. And that's again part of the work that I do with my coaching programs.
I see. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think some people, I think nobody here listening has had safety in traditional parents
Right,
or other figures, but
right,
yeah, but I would, yeah, I think there would be a teacher or a
right,
friend or even a pet or animal or something, even nature, you can find safety
right,
in a wonderful tree you love or yeah, just something we all like resourcing as you had said, and as you face things like a piece at a
right,
time not all at once because it's
right.
way too overwhelming, yeah, to do everything all at
Absolutely,
once.
absolutely.
Well, what an incredible journey you've had. Like, what would you say are still some of your challenges at like in this present day, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, absolutely. I think some of my own challenges, not necessarily a challenge, it's an ongoing process.
Hmm.
You know, I'm continually in the process of becoming who it is that I already am because I spent so much time being who I wasn't.
Yes.
So, so it's a process, and I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as an unmasking, an
Hmm.
evolution, and as something wonderful to take a hold of.
Mm, I love that. Yes. And just, like painting the canvas or just, yeah, like slowly, or it's like a
Yes,
little scratch off. Just
yes,
that. Yeah. And remembering who we are. Yes. Yes. Because I think you had mentioned before, just so much is just, we don't even know who we are
we
because
don't
we've
know.
been
We
taught.
don't know because we have taken so much time accepting what other people have said that we are. So we have other people voices in our head. When we look
Mhm.
in the mirror, we're actually looking at other people faces of us.
True. Yes. Oh, that's so powerful. And like, well, so what advice do you have on like how do you stop that, stop them from influencing us? Or is it that like they'll always be maybe influ like maybe the people closest to us, or what's your opinion on that? Or
Well, we are influenced.
Mhm.
It's the power that we give to the influence that matters.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So we are influenced. Something that I say, I have this saying that I tell my clients. And the saying is our ears hear our words. Our mouth are the closest thing to our ears. So if we stop repeating what other people say to us and say to ourselves who we really are, then everything about us will begin to align with who we are. Because if we pay attention to it, the outcomes we have in life are really aligned with the beliefs that we have about ourselves.
Mhm.
So start believing different, right? Because if we say, oh, I can't get anything right, and then we wonder why we can't get anything right,
Mhm.
it's because our entire being is looking for us to get things wrong because that is what we're telling ourselves we want. Even though we said, no, it's not. Yes, yes, it is.
Mhm.
And when we do get that one thing right, every now and then, things fall into place and we go, oh man, this never happens to me. I can't believe I won. I can't believe I got that job. I can't believe what we're telling our body is you messed up.
Mhm.
And our body's like, "Oh, man, she won. oh, she got the job and she wasn't supposed to. Oh, I did something wrong.
Mhm.
And then we go back into the pattern and say, see, I told you I don't get anything right. No, no. It's how we speak to ourselves. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever had this when you were in the car with your parents or somebody on a long trip, and you're like, okay, every green car, point it out, say green, green. And all of a sudden, you begin seeing green cars. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't know there were that many green cars out there. Well, it's because you told your subconscious, this is what I'm focusing on now. This is what I want to bring into my conscience. This is what I want to see. This is how I want it to be. And that begins to happen. And it's the exact same thing with our life. Of course, it takes work. I mean, you can't just talk and stuff happens. Absolutely
True.
not. I am not of that genre.
Yes.
But what we tell ourselves in conjunction with our actions absolutely have power in our lives. Absolutely. So
Mhm.
begin when you look in the mirror, instead of repeating something that someone else have imposed on you, repeat something to yourself that you believe about yourself. And if you don't even believe it yet, but what you want to believe, because you cannot see what you don't believe is possible.
Mhm. So is it still useful to say it if you don't
Yes,
believe it?
yes.
Okay.
So you don't have to believe it, you have to know that it's true. I know I'm beautiful, you know. So
Mm.
I mean, look in the mirror and be like, no, 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 no. I know I'm beautiful. So I tell myself I'm beautiful, not because it's some catchphrase. It's because I actually look in the mirror and look myself in the eyes and pay attention to every wrinkle and every imperfected line and say, no, that's part of what makes this canvas beautiful and unique. But I don't
Mm.
want to be a copy. Not a copy. Somebody say, oh, you got such and such. Absolutely. That's the extra oomph that, brings out the beauty that I am. When we begin seeing ourselves as we truly are, because it's true.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah,
beautifully made.
absolutely.
It's true. So when we begin seeing ourselves as we are and not being critical of the vessel that we have been placed in, oh yeah,
Mm.
amazing things can happen.
And for someone who, how do you get from not knowing to deeply knowing?
Well, you have to you feel it on the inside of you. So if you have an inkling that there's more, I'm tired, it's almost as if for some of us, we have to come to this ending spot, right? That
Mhm.
I don't know. And mostly a lot of my clients will start with, well, I don't know. I don't know. And why don't you know? If you don't know, then you're ready. Then we can talk about the journaling, right? So the journaling is something that can help you to know. You just begin writing about your feelings. No guide, no prompt, just begin writing and begin seeing what is on the inside of you. So it's a process. And some of us, we actually need guidance and help.
Mhm. Absolutely. In our last few minutes, just wanted to share, ask you for any like practical thing you'd love to share with the audience that they can try out right away after this episode, and also how can people find you and connect with you?
Yes. So one of the things that you can do is the journaling that I just talked about. So just free flow. And a lot of times when we have high achievers, I consider myself a high achiever, right? So it's like, oh, everything's got to be done right. If you get rid of the perfectionism and all of that stuff and just let it flow,
Mhm.
whatever you're thinking about, just write it down. The doesn't have to be correct penmanship, don't even have to spell all the words. Just write, just set aside 10, 15 minutes and begin writing. And that will begin to open up to us some things about ourselves that we may need to explore further. Something else that I would say is practice your mindfulness. I talked about our disassociated parts and coming into the room. One way to really deal with what we're dealing with is to be present. And you can't be present unless you're in the room. So that could be feeling the chair underneath your bottom, feeling the floor underneath your feet, touching the back of your hand and focusing in on um how that feels. Those are all things that you can do to bring yourself into the room, bring yourself into the present so you can begin dealing with some of those things.
I love that. Thank you. And lastly, how can people find you and maybe work with you?
Yes. On Facebook, I am Donna Davis Presents. And there's a link in my bio there with all of my contact information. On Instagram, I'm Donna underscore Davis underscore presents. Or you can feel free to email me at ddavis@donnadavispresents.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on as a guest today and sharing your story and experiences and wisdom. And we're going to end the episode now. And thanks
Okay, thank
again.
you for having me.
Okay.
Bye.